hit the record button. Okay, hi everybody, Downwind Sim here. I'm alongside Michael. We're going to go over patches for Ortho4XP. So patches are an interesting kind of thing. It lets you actually design and manipulate the three-dimensional terrain. And I'll just give you an example here real quick. A visual example here. Let me clear this out. And let me add, so normally the the terrain is based on a digital elevation model, and then what you end up doing with the patch is that you can define an area in JOSM to say I want that to be at a certain elevation, and then I can say, okay, I want this shape to be like this. And I want, for instance, I want this thing to be up here, and then I want this little square to be down here, and I want this one to be, maybe a little bit bigger, so on and so forth. And then what you can do is you can also do this to where if I go into here, and then let's see, I can create, essentially what it allows you to do is, I'm trying to think how I can do this. I can grab this vertex, and I can move that up to here, and I can move that up to there, and I can define like a ramp that goes up, for instance. So anyway, that's just a simple way to think about what you're doing. Let me get into some examples here. So patch files are just like a water definition, or just like a airport definition or a road definition. It's a OpenStreetMap file with ways and also parameters, keys and tags and that sort of thing. And patches live, so on my system, Ortho4XP, the actual software is installed on my D drive. So your installation might be slightly different, but on mine it's on my D drive and then in a folder called Ortho4XP. So that's what we're looking at now. And you'll see that there's a folder here called patches. So this is where the patch files live. And if we drill down into that, you'll see this stuff is just slop, so this does not matter. But what does matter is this folder structure. So for instance, if we go into I don't know, let's kind of drill down. So here's a patch for Cal Black. Here's a patch for Kachina Bridge. If I go back to let me go back and let's do something I'm a little more familiar with here. Okay, so in this folder here, this is KBBG. So this is the airport that is right outside of Branson, Missouri. And so if I throw this over here, let me turn off the layers. I'll just kind of show you this real quick as to where this is at. So Chicago's up here, St. Louis is here, Kansas City's here, KBBG is down here, right there. So right on the border of Missouri and Arkansas. In fact, let me get that loading in the sim, and so we can kind of look at what that looks like. BBG, Branson Regional, and let's just spawn in there and give me something simple, just that, and let's do clear skies. Let me turn off Ortho4XP, and we'll just do clear skies and daytime. So we're just going to look and see what this stuff looks like. So this is the let me get back to where that patch file was at. This is the patch file for KBBG, and of course this folder structure is very important. So this folder structure mimics what's in the OSM data. So for instance, let's identify what tile we're working with. So this is the airport that we're dealing with, and we want to be, well, here's a lat long coordinate. So our tile that we're working with actually is plus 36 minus 94. So right there. And so our airport sits within that tile. That should be self-explanatory based on the other tutorials that I did. So plus 36 minus 94. So if we look at this folder structure, then you'll see that it falls within that folder. And then in fact, let's go back and go into the OSM data. So let's go here. So it'd be plus, it'd be in here, and then it'd be, what did I say it was? 94, 3694. So 3694. So this is where this should look familiar, right? You see what we've manipulated before. And so this folder structure, so plus 30 minus 100 plus 36 minus 094, that is mimicked in the patches folder. So you'll see here, here's my patches folder, and then here's plus 30 minus 100, so that's the same as over here in the OSM data. And then it drills down again, plus 36 minus 94 here. And so this folder structure here that's in your OSM data, the patches has to mimic that same path. And if you have not made any patches before, you'll have to make these folders manually. So you'll have to create those and then ultimately put the patch file inside there. So let's look in here, and you'll see that there's the patch file. Now, the other thing that's important is the patch file has to be named something.patch.osm. The stuff here at the beginning, KBBG, doesn't really matter. Of course, it's important to make it something that makes sense to you or recognizable. I just put the airport code since I was reshaping the land around wherever where'd the airport go? I lost it already. Right here. I was reshaping that stuff at KBBG Branson, so I just named it KBBG. So the important part is, though, is that it has to be named whatever up here, and then a .patch.osm. It has to be named that for Ortho4XP to see it. So let's look real quick at, I've loaded in at KBBG, and let's go outside the airplane, and let's just kind of look and see what we have going on. So this is an area in the Ozarks, and I've been here before in real life, and they basically chopped off a bunch of mountains to make this airport, and it's full of valleys, and as you can see, you can kind of see what's going on here. So there's a road that winds up through the hills and then comes into the airport, and then you can see hopefully you can kind of tell what I've done to the terrain here. This is very, very much like it really is. So they've basically scraped off a bunch of mountains. They've left a valley in here. They've created an area for the taxiway to get out here to the runway. And then if you go, here's a leftover chunk of mountain that is still sitting there. So you can kind of see what's going on there. And then if we go down here, you can also see this. Here's a little road that goes down here, and then a shape here that goes around. And we'll look at what the patch file is that made this. And so you can see as you're coming in on an approach into here, it's very realistic. So it looks like they indeed scraped the mountain off and did a bunch of earthwork to get this to work. So now that you've seen that, let's look at the patch file that actually creates this. Let's go into JOSM, and I've forgotten which tile we're working on. 36. Michael, what did we say? 3694.
3694.
There it is. Yeah.
Minus 94.
Okay, so let's open up. Let's go in here and we'll open up this. And so it would be in here, All right, so I'm going to open up my patch. And again, that folder structure needs to be right. And then I'm just going to open up the OSM data here just so that you can see also where this sits. So OSM 30 here, and then 3694 in here. So let's go ahead and do let's do water, and then let's do airports as well. So one thing that I will tell you, zoom in a little bit here. Okay, this is the Branson Airport as we're looking at the airports.osm. One thing that I will tell you is that I have had problems with if there's data in here that defines the airport sometimes, and if there's data here that defines the airport and a patch file at the same time, sometimes you can get unexpected results. So if you do, then the solution would be delete this, like, pick all of this and delete it, hit delete, and then just stick with your patch file. This particular one seemed to work okay, but I'm not sure why. I've done other places where I've had conflicting problems. You end up with this thing that looks like an accordion, and it looks terrible. So that's.
Okay, so I'll
Go ahead.
let me interrupt real quick. Does it matter which layer you're currently on in the layers window when you select all that and delete it to resolve this conflict? Because I see right now you're on the world imagery layer.
Actually, the active layer is the one with the green check mark. So great question.
Okay.
So this doesn't. You'll see the green check mark is not changing, and you'll see that
Okay.
this is still live here. So no matter what I pick, I'm still the layer with
Okay.
the green check mark is the one that's active.
Okay. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Great question. So if I pick, in other words, if I pick the water, I can't select anything here because there's no water here.
Okay, and you're selecting those layers by those blue arrows then, correct? You're moving the green check mark up and down. Okay.
I'm clicking over here. I'm clicking right
Okay,
above it.
gotcha.
That's what makes you switch layers. So
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just loaded these in just so that you could see them and see
Okay.
how they relate to one another. And the important thing is here is, for some reason Branson worked, but I've made most of the time what I do is I come in, if I'm going to patch an airport, I will go to the airports.osm file and I'll select everything and I'll delete it. I'll delete all the data that defines that airport. I won't do an outline. I won't do a runway. I won't do anything because I've had you'll end up with something that looks like an accordion, literally going down the runway, and it's like, oh, what happened there? And
Almost like two custom sceneries in the same spot.
I think that's it. I think they fight, and I'm not sure what the logic is on how it decides what it's going to make. So anyway, that's just some background on that. So right now I'm gonna turn this off, and let's just look at what the patch file does. So here's my patch file. I'm gonna go to that layer, and you can see that's what the patch file looks like. So it's not very complicated. Starting at the basics, the first thing that you can do is you can draw any shape. So that red shape right there, you can draw any shape as long as it's a closed way. So in other words, like if I don't want to leave an open way like this, I don't want to do that. But as long as it's a closed way, then you close it. Okay, as long as it's that, I can create any shape with any number of points, and I can give this shape a specific altitude in meters, not in feet, but in meters. So you'll have to, if you know the altitude of an airport, and it's the elevation is so many feet, then just use Google to convert that to meters, and then you would assign a tag to get that to show
Okay.
up. So if we examine this shape, this one is all completely flat. You'll notice the tag over here that says altitude is the key, and the value is 386 meters. So to look at that back in the sim to see what that does, let's go look at this here real quick. So there's a shape like right in here by this taxiway that all of this is flat, and it's 386 meters. So that's what carves this area around this little valley here, and I ran that out here to this edge, and then you can kind of see it goes over to here, and so on and so forth. So the whole tarmac area, the whole ramp area, is 386 meters. And you can see the shape of what I've defined there. So that's it in a very, very basic way. Just starting at the basics. So you can define any shape, any number of points, given an altitude in meters. So the key is altitude. The value is in meters. Okay, so moving on. If you look at this shape here, you'll notice that I have the same thing. So it's a shape with curves and multi-points and all of this around here, and you'll see that altitude is 383 meters. So a difference of 386 to 383. So this area down here is 3 meters lower than this area here. So if we look at that in the sim, 3 meters, you probably can't tell it, but if you would land here, you could sense that in an as you're coming into land. You could sense that, hey, this goes slightly downhill. Yeah, so you can see that in the sim that goes slightly downhill as you go down to the end of the runway. Okay, so the next big thing then is how do you get it to ramp down between fixed altitudes? And that is done with now this is important, this is done with a four vertice square, essentially. It can be a rectangle, but it has to be 4 vertices. And here's the other thing is, you'll notice on here that this closed way has 2 keys, altitude high and altitude low, and you'll notice that the altitude high is 386 and the altitude low is 383. So again, this one here is at 386, this one down here is 383. So this shape then defines a ramp that goes from the 386 area down to the 383 area. And I've given
Okay.
those values, altitude high, altitude low, to define the ramp. So
Okay.
the one more thing, the other thing that's important to do here, like if I were to, let's just recreate this from scratch and just kind of do the same thing. I'm going to do, so I'm going to do the ramp first. So the first thing to do is you would do a point, and the very first point that you do is the high point, and then the next point that you do is the low point. And that's important too, because it always happens like that. So click the high point first, low point second, and then you would maybe cross over the runway, go back, and then close it, and then you would give it a tag. You would say altitude underscore high, and that would be, let's say it would be on 450. So it'd be 450 meters at this point right here, and then you would give it another key and you would say altitude underscore low, and let's say it's 400 at that point. So if I were to cook this tile, it would be 450 meters at this point and this point, and then it would slope down to along this line would be 400 meters. So go ahead with your question, Michael.
You directly just answered my question as to what defines the high point and the low point of the bridge. So
Yeah,
knowing that the first point is going to be the high point.
the first point is always the high point. So with that constraint, with those, you can define an area, so like if I were to continue this then, right? So I would make a square out here, and I would say this altitude, not a high or a low, but just an altitude, um, would then be 450, right? And then I could go in here and I could say, move this piece up to here, and then move this piece up to here, and I could do that. And I don't know if these are joined. Let me look real quick here. They're not joined. They're just sitting right on top of each other. Is how I made them. So I would just zoom in way in here and just go. There you go. And there's probably some rounding function or says, oh, these points are close enough, just treat them like the same. So something like that then would give me this shape here would be 450 meters, and then it would ramp down based on this shape to take us down to the 400 meter area. So with those constraints involved, let me show you one other thing. There's also some other keys that you can add, and there's a website or a couple of videos by this guy called A Layman's Insight. If you just search for Ortho4XP patch, you should hit these. This guy's made a couple of things, so you can watch his stuff. Here's another. You'll see our altitude high key. So that high and low. So you'll see these. So an altitude high and an altitude low. And then you have a thing called cell size and a thing called profile. So we could actually add over here, we could say, let's add another one. We could say profile, and we could say spline. And then what that would do is that would create
on the elevation
something similar to this. So for instance, we had 450 meters here, and then it would gradually slope down like this in the shape of this down to 400. And so you can say, give me these different profiles, or give me, I want to make something like this, or I want to make something like this. And so these would be the values that you would use, and that you would add into here into the JOSM. Go ahead.
Is either of those a default? If you do not define a profile, what would necessarily display?
I think it's linear. I think it's just a straight linear ramp.
Okay.
So in other
like
words,
a straight line.
Yep. If you had a vertex here and a vertex here, and you just drew a straight line in between.
Okay.
So generally, a spline is a better thing. On an airport runway or something like that, they would generally make a
right.
A gradual transition into the slope. But that's just the underlying thought process. So with that said, let's just kind of examine what I did here. So I knew the constraints for this airport were. In fact, let's go look at this here real quick, and I'll just share my thought process on this. And this is not the end all be all. So if you come up with something that's better, certainly let me know. So here's the chart, and as you can see, the elevation here is 1,255 feet, and down here it's 1,302. So it's about a 50-foot difference from this end to this end. And so what I did then, based on that, because they usually don't tell you like elevations on on charts of like, well, where is it here or where is it here? You can sometimes look on Google Street Maps, or you can, if you find some images that might give you an idea of the topography of a particular airport, you can kind of use that as a hint. This one, I really didn't have anything, so I'm like, okay, it's 1255 down here, it's 1302 down here. And so if we look at that, you'll notice that this shape here is 383 meters. I'm sure that number, this 1255 converts to 383. And up here on this other end, then, it goes from 397, which would be equivalent to 1302. 1,302 feet. So I looked at the charts and I'm like, okay, that's that and that's that. So if this is just a regular sloping runway, I kind of, did some guesstimations. I thought, well, the ramp is probably somewhere not quite in the middle, but somewhere leaning on this side. That's probably the elevation there. And so I'll make a fixed altitude here. I'll make a fixed altitude at this end. I'll make a fixed altitude at this end. And I'll do a slope in between here, and I'll do a slope in between here. And then the other thing that I did was, like here, this is some of the things that I did to actually shape, like to create this valley. So let's go back and look at the sim here real quick. You'll see this area is kind of sunken in right through here. And so what I did, if you look at the patch file, you'll see that this shape, actually it's this shape here, this is the area that's sunken down. So the altitude on that is 373, and again the altitude here is 386. So that's a 13-meter difference from here, and then it goes down to this. So you can kind of see what I did. I'm like, well, this is sort of a lower spot down here. This is a higher spot, and I'm not going to make anything in between. I'm just going to let Ortho4XP fill in the gap in here. And then the same way with this thing, this is an altitude of 394, so we're higher. So if we go back and look at the sim again, you'll see that that's this area here. And you'll see that goes up like a hill. So
thanks. Hey.
So with a little creativity, you can really do some manipulation and get things kind of more accurate as to what you would want to see in the sim. So any other questions? Here's a ramp then that goes from here, from this shape. There's an altitude high, altitude low. Here's another ramp. So again, I've got two ramps that go back to back to one another. And again, the altitudes match. If you go 386 to 390, then this one will go 390 to 394, and then up here is 394. So that then creates this little road up. You can kind of see what's going on there.
You could really almost duplicate, real live terrain in a real live airport and put it right in X-plane. That's amazing.
Yes. So it's just a matter of how complicated you want to get. I have had better results of keeping the patches as simple as possible. And you'll see here that these are the areas that define this roadway that runs around the edge. And I actually adjusted the position a little bit because if you look at the sim, let's run down here to the other end real quick, and you'll see that I think the ortho imagery didn't line up exactly right, so I just modified it to fit that road, and it does. It does now.
Some of this work that Ralph does is extraordinary.
Oh yeah, I can believe it. Absolutely.
Hey, JPC. We're doing
What's going on, Ralph? How you doing?
Good. We're doing a little tutorial on Ortho4XP patching. So
nice.
It's kind of
building some scenery, Michael?
Yeah, learning some.
Yeah. So we're just going through the basics of how to do these and how this works. So anyway, you can get like I said, this is, if you kind of step back and look, you can see how hilly this area is, and then you can see what they did to this airport, carved off a bunch of mountains and made a flat spot, and it looks really nice in the sim. So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions, Michael?
No, I think you actually covered just about everything. And obviously, Ortho4XP is required to utilize these patches, then, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And then once they're in the folder structure, once they're in the correct spot, when you go to build the tile, and you'll see, like normally when you run or cook a tile, you'll see a bunch of verbiage that shows up in this, like, hey, I'm building this and I'm downloading this
Correct.
data and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
If you watch that at the beginning, you'll see a line in there that says patching,
Elevation. Okay.
blah, 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 and it'll show this kbbg.patch.osm. So if you don't see anything like that go by, chances are you didn't name it right or it's not in the right folder. So
Okay.
those are things to check. And I would recommend as well to go back and watch, just for further reference, go back and watch this video and watch the other one that this guy made. He got into a lot of details here. There's two of them right here. He got into a lot of detail with patching, and the more complicated they are, the worse the results are, at least in my opinion. So again, I would go simple.
Hey guys,
Less is more.
Ali here.
Right, but that's good
It's been a long
information. No,
time.
there's a lot of sloping runways here around
Too
home
long,
that I'd like to
unfortunately.
actually define the slopes in. So
Yeah.
it's good.
Okay, well, if you have any other questions or whatever, feel free to hit me up on the Discord, and I'll stop the tutorial here, and good luck with your patching.